Happy game day, Seattle hockey fans. Erica Ayala and Zaiem Bag back to talk about everything that you need to know about the Seattle Kraken ahead of their game against Chicago.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy welcome back Ryan Donato Day to all who celebrate. Erica L. Ayala here alongside Zaiem Bag. Had to get that out of the way right away, Zaiem. I am squarely in the Team Donato camp, but how are you doing, my friend?
It's game day. It's the best day of the, I guess, 2 days. I was say the best day of the week, but there are three. I love going to home games, and it feels like an event. Even when the Kraken haven't been very good, like last year, it just always feels special, and it's such a privilege to be able to cover a hockey team from Climate Pledge Arena, and they let us do this.
I know. Yeah, this is what we do. This is what we do. I love it. So glad to have you back. I know you joined me for yesterday's episode. We just can't get enough hockey and hockey talk. So I love having you on here. Zaiem Bag, of course, of Davy Jones Locker Room. So make sure you give them a follow. But, we're going to get right into it. It's a game day. The Seattle Kraken have a chance to extend their winning streak. But like we talked about on the last episode, there is still plenty on the whiteboard for this team to adjust, to get right, to be more consistent with. And we're going to talk about a few of those things. Now, Zaiem, this is not necessarily a great Chicago team. They haven't been a great Chicago team for a few years. This is a Seattle Kraken team that, if we are being generous, I think is still figuring it out. I think if we maybe look and project a little bit beyond even the results that we have now, that this might be a team that's still struggling. Again, not just to be consistent, but to be relevant in a playoff race. But the Chicago Blackhawks come in 6-9-1. The Seattle Kraken 7-8-1. The Seattle Kraken hopefully are able to harness some of the momentum that has given them wins, gritty wins, where at times we weren't sure they were going to get the win. But gritty wins against Vegas and Columbus. And so let's just talk about Seattle first. Given what you were able to see at Climate Pledge Arena, Zaiem, what are some of the things that you want to see the Seattle Kraken team focus on as they prepare for Chicago later tonight?
Well, the good news is Chicago, as you mentioned, is not a very good team, and Columbus also not a very good team. So these last couple games, or the game 2 days ago and then tonight, can serve as a way to solve what has been Seattle's biggest problem this year, which is if they don't get the puck in transition and they create chances off the rush, they've really, really struggled once teams figured out that's what Seattle is trying to do. And they haven't had a counter to the counter. And that counter is the dump and chase and creating chances off the cycle. The road trip, the offense really collapsed. It looked really terrible, and the goal production wasn't there. And when they got back from the road trip, they were practicing. They're spending more time on doing exactly that, is creating chances off the cycle. So it's something that the coaching staff has identified correctly as a problem, and they're working on this. Now, in the first period against Columbus, it wasn't really there, but in the second period it was, but that was more of an issue of execution. Chicago's kind of, look, it's these are still professional hockey teams. These still have professional hockey players, but Chicago is just not that talented of an opponent. And so this gives them a chance to use it as, not like a preseason game or like a practice, but certainly against weaker competition to try things, because your margin of error is a lot bigger when you are playing against a team that doesn't have Nathan McKinnon or Connor McDavid or Nikita Kucherov that's going to just go the other way and punish you immediately for making a tiny mistake.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think at times throughout the Seattle Kraken's very short history, playing up or playing down to the opponent has been a little bit of a challenge. I think we've seen at times that the Seattle Kraken have been able to play up to their opponent, but I don't think that they have been able to consistently make opponents play up to them, if that makes sense. And that could be, some people call these, trap games or whatever you want to say. That could be a concern, especially for a team that I think is still vulnerable when it comes to consistency and some of the discipline that you need to be an effective hockey team. And, we talked about goaltending last time. Of course, we've been talking about Daniel Sprong basically since Friday when the news broke that he would be returning to the Seattle Kraken. As of the time of us recording, we don't have any updates on Daniel Sprong. But I think it's just an interesting exercise, not to talk about who we think is going to be maybe moving on from the Kraken, which is what we did in the last episode, but to really lean into what Daniel Sprong can bring to this team. Now, I don't think we're going to see him against Chicago, but I do think it's an interesting opportunity to just really lean into all things Daniel Sprong. What do we know about Daniel since him leaving Seattle? I thought it was really telling and really interesting that Ron Francis, and this is a video we have up on Locked On Kraken, we've talked about it, broke it down a little bit more. But in his media availability, talking about the signing of Daniel Sprong from Vancouver for future considerations, he talked about how even when Spronger left the first time, it wasn't necessarily because the Seattle Kraken didn't want him, Zaiem. It was just that they had some salary cap restrictions and they encouraged him to play the market and see where he could land. He ended up in Detroit and then eventually, of course, this season in Vancouver. But we know that he will be returning once his visa situation has been sorted. So, I mean, if we're dropping Daniel Sprong, assuming that we have to make no roster changes, because we know that's not real, but assuming we just drop him into this roster for this Seattle Kraken team, which is a new head coach comparative to the last time he was here, what are some of the things that you think will work for Daniel Sprong in round 2, his second go round with Seattle? And maybe are there some areas that I don't want to say are concerning, but that you're going to keep an eye on?
One thing I think is pretty interesting. So Daniel Sprong, for those who maybe didn't follow the Kraken when he was here or follow that closely, he has a great shot. He has really good offensive instincts, and defense is more like a suggestion, like the flavor of a LaCroix drink. It's like a thought of a hint of strawberry. Sprong is like, well, I will think sometimes about defense in a slightly fond way from time to time.
Oh, man.
Dave Hackstall, who is so defensive oriented and defense first, it drove him crazy. It was pretty clear in watching the press conferences, and I wasn't covering Kraken at the time, so I was just kind of watching from media. But even then, Hackstall talked about Sprong differently than he talked about other players, and not in a warm, affectionate way. Mm-hmm. He was often a healthy scratch, and he didn't get a lot of ice time. So I think there was some tension. Sprong also seemed pretty displeased with Dave Hackstall. That was just not a good match.
Yeah.
Now, Bilesma doesn't seem to have the same disdain for players who don't focus on defense.
Yeah.
I mean, no coach is going to love it, but I think Bilesma is a lot more mentally equipped to deal with a player who is all gas, no brakes.
Yeah.
Where Hackstall it ate at him. It like his soul like eroded every single time that Sprong wouldn't get back on it. And so I'm hoping that Sprong is happier here, and he'll probably fit in on the power play because that's a really great role for him. He's got that absolutely lethal shot. Where he fits in, I mean, the thing is, he might not play right away anyway, because the fourth line has been fantastic.
Right.
So, where does he fit in the lineup? I mean, when Vince Dunn comes back, then yes, someone's going to be moved, and then there'll be a roster spot open there. But Vince Dunn might be a couple weeks away from returning. So until that happens,
that's very real.
Sprong may just not find a role in the lineup yet, because there's nobody, I think, that he currently would be an upgrade over the way that everyone is playing.
Yeah, and you and I were able to talk on yesterday's episode. We talked about Brandon Tanev stepping it up, Ty Cartier and Oliver Bjorkstrand, who were both healthy scratches, immediately making an impact upon returning to the lineup. I think what's also interesting is, and like you mentioned that Dave Haxtell maybe didn't really appreciate the fullness of Daniel Sprong in who he is, right? Instead of who he wasn't. But I think I was cackling when I heard Dan Bilesma. He was asked something like, what do you know about Daniel Sprong? And I'm actually probably going to just pop the recording in here, but he basically says he's Dutch. Like that's what he knows about him. And so whether it's a part of Dan Bilesma literally getting to know more than Daniel Sprong is Dutch, or it's the visa, delay that is why Daniel Sprong's not with the team immediately. I think you're onto something that, and again, the team right now on that fourth line, where likely Daniel Sprong would fit in because that's where he was. We didn't see him go above the third line, let's just say, with the Seattle Kraken. That was a different team in a lot of ways, but arguably, at least on paper, this is a more equipped Seattle Kraken team. They're just still trying to put everything together. But I think, so what does that mean for Daniel? What does that mean for the Seattle Kraken roster, knowing that, again, it's inevitable? There will be a move happening. And so I'm curious to see how Dave and company handle this. Do you kind of throw him in, see what's going to happen here? Or do you let him observe and then attack, once he's been able to see what's happening? I think that's kind of, even if you put that in a vacuum on its own, I'm not sure what the answer is. But then, Zaiem, as we're speaking ahead of this Chicago game, you also have a Seattle Kraken team who at times had difficulty stringing wins together that could potentially pull together 3 consecutive wins at home, no less. So even if Sprong were available for tonight or over the weekend, as we have 2 of the teams from New York coming in, like, how much do you want to disrupt, although maybe not completely seamless, but some of the mojo that seems to be with the Seattle Kraken right now?
I mean, look, maybe Daniel Sprong already did his job because the offense didn't have any mojo. And then they made that trade. And now all of a sudden, the Kraken offense has a lot more juice to it. And maybe these things are related. Maybe they're not. But it sure feels a lot different when the Kraken are going game after game, scoring 1 goal or fewer. And then you make the Sprong trade because you're like, look, something is broken and we need to fix it. Now, 2 games, not that many games, obviously, but the team seems like they've responded well. And maybe that's just what the Kraken needed, was to say, hey, you know what? If you don't get it done, we got old Spronger here, and the fans love him. So, you better get it done, because otherwise he's going to come in and they're just going to celebrate him. And then you're going to be on the sideline. No one's going to remember you ever again.
Woof. Realness.
Or something like
it's like what you said. What was it? I guess maybe 2 weeks ago now. Message sent, message received.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And I think you're right. Whether I do think that the Daniel Sprong acquisition was a part of the intentionality, and some of the kind of theme that I've been running with this week is, applying pressure. Now, this is something that the Seattle Kraken have to do on the ice. And we're going to talk about that, especially getting ready for the Chicago team. But I also think applying pressure is something that we're seeing up and down the organization. We've talked about it before, you and I, Zaiem. There's probably some pressure on Ron Francis coming from above. And that pressure trickled down to make a coaching move. And so I don't know how much pressure Dan Bylsma is feeling at this particular moment, but he's got to be aware. I mean, literally, he is a part of the moving pieces that have removed the first ever head coach, brought him in. So there's just a lot of ways that there is pressure on this Seattle Kraken organization, but pressure is not always a bad thing. And if you listen to Jay-Z, he reminds you that pressure makes diamonds. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL, all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by Select Quote, the World Series, Super Bowl, of course, the Stanley Cup Final, and the Olympics. The world's top athletes get to play in these top-level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They can find you the right price, and they can find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safe in your family's end zone. These policies are more affordable than you think. You could get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 per month. So head to selectquote.com and a licensed insurance agent will call you right away with the right policy for your life and your budget. Get the right insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. Again, go to selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. And that's how you get started today. That's selectquote.com/LockedOnNHL. All right, Zaiem. Applying pressure. I want to keep that as the theme this week because you hit it perfectly without me even mentioning the weekly theme. I just made that up. I've never had a weekly theme ever on Locked On Kraken, but this seems apropos. I mean, there just is a lot of onus for this roster, for the players on the Seattle Kraken to really step up and to level up. And again, we don't want them to fall into Chicago being a trap game, but I don't even want to. I know we have on our rundown like keys against Chicago, but like I feel like we say this every time we hop on the mics. I don't know that we can talk about the other team yet, Zaiem, because we still don't know what this team, what this roster can handle. And that's why I think the theme of applying pressure is so huge. And, you joined me on yesterday's episode. We talked about some players that could be under that crunch. Some players like Oliver Bjorkstrand and Ty Cartier, who have already seen the implications, right, of quote unquote applying pressure. But now we have to see results. Daniel Sprong, again, as of the time we're recording, will not be available for the Seattle Kraken against this game, against Chicago in tonight's game. But there is still a pressure. I don't think that pressure has been alleviated, Zaiem, even though the Seattle Kraken got 2 back-to-back wins.
Pressure is going to be there all season. It's going to be there for multiple seasons. An interesting thing. So Dylan from Emerald City Hockey, he was out in Vancouver and covered the game there when the Kraken were there. And one thing that was really interesting was the Seattle Times did not send anybody on the road trip. And so there was no Kraken media on this road trip except for the one game that Dylan was there. And he said that it was like the Raptors were more popular than the Leafs when he was there. Like the crowd was just much more Raptor oriented, and that's where people were going to the games more, which is shocking. Like of all the markets, to find that, like, because hockey's been struggling, and now, and the NBA seems to be kind of on its way up, and so I think across the league there might be a sense of like, okay, we really need to do something about making our hockey product popular or better. Now, when you zoom back into just Seattle, that dynamic is really unique because the Sonics are coming. I think I mentioned every week because it's relevant and it informs everything that the Kraken do from the top down. And so, yeah, there's pressure to win. And look, the Kraken, I mean, they don't have a 500 record, but they are 2 points out of the 8th playoff spot in the West. So they're not buried. They're not out of it. They want to get better over time and maybe start stringing together some more wins that wouldn't have come earlier in the year. But I think if they flame out and they have another top 10 pick, I think that's it for Ron Francis. And so, he's feeling the pressure and he has his own personal incentives. And maybe that's why you overpay for a Chandler Stephenson and you pay for Brandon Montour when you don't need to pay for him at this point. But yeah, I think there's pressure, and then that pressure is not just coming down from Ron Francis, but you're starting to see that pressure on Coach Bilesma he's sending a message, and they're trading for Daniel Sprong, and I think the Sonics, the shadow of it is tinging the way the Kraken go about their large scale philosophy.
That's so interesting to me. Because I don't doubt it, not even for a second. And there is a part of me that is having a really hard time hearing that because, bruh, fam, can we be honest? Like, is this a safe place? Did the front office ownership think that they were going to find their way to a championship without that pressure of the Sonics coming back? Like, the more I think about some of the moves that have been made, but more so some of the moves that have not been made, like, if we just focus on last year, let me just pick a central focal point, or else I will go on a tangent that will continue to the end of time. Not replacing your fourth line production in the next season, trying to effectively return to the playoffs. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen. But then also, after failing to make the postseason in back-to-back years, did it in season 2 or far from it in season 3, then you spend effectively to your max in what we are now in season 4. Like, I can't get over the fact that I certainly do not see the vision. I think I'm a decently smart person. I like to think that I'm a logical person in most circumstances. I will not say I'm the smartest person in any room, because we can always improve. We should always improve ourselves. But I'm just trying to make it make sense for me, Zaiem. Is it really only the Sonics coming in that is effectively riling up this organization to be better? Because that there's a part of me that rejects that completely. I'm not saying it's not real, but also, what? Today's episode of Locked On Kraken also brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Did you know that Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings? Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win 100x your cash. Run your game all season long with Prize Picks. And now you can 100x your money, 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. You join over 10 million users when you sign up today. And Prize Picks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. And Prize Picks now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. So sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play your first $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks also has all kinds of weekly promotions that have big payouts like Taco Tuesday each Tuesday. So a reminder to head over to Prize Picks, download the app today, use promo code LOCKEDONNHL, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. I came into this season wondering how Dan Bylsma and the coaching staff could potentially unlock the most free, the most beautiful hockey version of Andre Burakovsky, and how they would do that with who they pair him with. We talked about it on yesterday's episode, Zaiem. We know something's coming, right? For the theater fans, that was, yes, a reference to West Side Story. Something is coming. I don't know what it is, but I sure hope it is going to be great. We don't know what is coming. And eventually, if players like Andre Burakovsky, I would argue Oliver Bjorkstrand, I know we talked on yesterday's episode, now we kind of got him on the cheap, maybe fleecing Columbus. And I think there is a world where even an Ellie Tolvanen, if we want to keep those kinds of players around the Seattle Kraken, I think that there is a little bit of an art to thinking about the roster in relation to those players that the Seattle Kraken need to tap into. And for me, I have trouble saying, because I am not a general manager, no one pays me to do this job. As a general manager, that is. I don't want to be dismissive and say that the organization hasn't thought about that, but I do think that the organization maybe needs to revisit the plan that they have for those offensive-minded players.
I think the Chandler Stephenson seemed like a really natural fit for Burakovsky when they signed him. And because Stephenson he's not a shooter, he's not a finisher, he's a table setter.
Yeah.
And, and Burakovsky is really, he's a fantastic finisher. He is, my favorite goal ever was game 1 of the 2022 Stanley Cup Finals. It was Colorado and Tampa Bay. It was in Colorado, and it was an overtime winner by Andre Burakovsky. And there is literally nothing better in sports than a home playoff overtime winner. So now imagine a home playoff overtime winner in the Stanley Cup Finals. I have never been in an environment like that. I don't know if I ever will be again. It was unbelievable. Everyone was losing their minds. But the thing was, sometimes in overtime, it's some random person. It's like, oh, crazy, like nobody was like, oh man, Andre Burakovsky, wow, that came out of nowhere. Like it wasn't
Right.
McKinnon or McCarr or Rantanen, but he's just like right there with them. And it's like, and it was such a laser of a shot. It was just like breathtaking. And the whole moment was unbelievable. And so I always just think about that. And I think about that Colorado Andre Burakovsky, the guy they thought they were signing. And I think he's still in there somewhere. I really, really do. Last game against Columbus, he had a breakaway. He wasn't able to score, but I see the shot. I see it there. I see the velocity, and it's just not quite getting there. But I'm not optimistic about everybody, but I don't think he's done. I don't think he's finished. And I believe. I do. I believe in Berkey. I'm a Berkey believer.
I believe in Berkey. I'm with you. I am with you. And I have been critical of the Burakovsky move, not so much because I don't believe in Andre Burakovsky, but because what Andre Burakovsky in his short time with the Seattle Kraken has shown us is that health could be an issue. Now, health doesn't seem to be an issue right now, Zaiem. And so maybe that's a little bit just of the last part of overcoming an injury, perhaps for some people, is mental. Just getting your mind and your body to be in lockstep, to know that you can execute everything in the way that you expect your body to execute. That's effectively some of the hardest part of an injury, knowing what you could do before and then trying to find your way back on the other side of an injury. Dare I say even better. When we unlock the full potential of Andre Burakovsky, because I agree with you. I believe in Andre. I know it's still in there. He felt so good. Like his demeanor was so different at training camp and preseason. He was excited to be healthy. So I just want him to find that healthy balance of getting a little bit of that edge back. And I think that's what's missing right now. I think it's just a little bit of his edge. Completely understandable, again, for a player not having any healthy seasons with the Seattle Kraken and hoping that this will be one. But when we get that edge from Berkey, woof, it will be a sight to behold, just like you said. And I can't wait for it. I cannot freaking wait.
Well, now he's on a line with Shane Wright instead of Chandler Stephenson. So that's an experiment. Shane Wright, who has been exceptional, also not really putting numbers on the score sheet, but playing very, very well.
Yep.
So maybe they're trying to unlock something there. I can certainly see that fit. I mean, Shane's vision is so high, and him able to find Berkey for finisher. If that starts connecting, then that could definitely be something. And then when it happens, it feels like it's just sort of like, whoa, where did all this come from? But it's like they're just so close, and the difference between not productive at all and putting a lot of goals in the net isn't that big.
Yeah, I would agree. And I like you mentioning Shane Wright, because I don't think Shane Wright gets enough credit for being a gritty player, because he's just so intelligent on the ice, and a lot of what he does seems to be effortless. But he has a grit. He has a moxie, as I like to say. He has the juice, and it is not something that, I mean, like there's some players that they wear it on their sleeves. I don't think that Shane Wright is that kind of player.
Mm-mm.
I don't think Burakovsky is either, but I think Berkey's probably a little further ahead. But if those two unlock at the same time, that is lethal. That is a lethal combination, because you've got good ice vision, good strength, and just grit. Gotta tap into that. And the danger I see sometimes, just generally speaking, is if you don't find a way to tap into and kind of control that beast when you need to, you can't always expect it to come when you want it. You have to be able to go there and just to unleash completely. And I don't think that we've seen that quite yet from the Seattle Kraken. I'm not sure we're going to see it against Chicago. I don't know if we'll have the opportunity, although history would tell us Chicago has gotten us before. and at home. So I'm not, we didn't really talk a lot about Chicago because, again, I don't think we're really there yet. But I just need the Seattle Kraken team to like dig super deep and just completely dominate a game from the beginning. I just want to see it so that I know it exists. Like the potential is there, but I need to know that the team knows that they know for sure that they can tap into that, and then eventually that they know how to control it. And we're not quite there yet. We're not quite there yet, but I believe in Berkey. I believe in this team. And Zaiem, hey, we got to get you ready for a game tonight. So we're going to wrap up here. Just give us some of the things that are in the works or that have already been up and published for Davy Jones' locker room.
Well, we have coverage and of every game. We preview and recap. We tweet out, and now we're operating on both Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter. So choose your messaging platform of choice where we do comprehensive coverage. We have locker room quotes. We have post-game content. We have dots, which is really cool. So we've been taking, the NHL.com dots. So like the Joey or the Jared McCann overtime winner, the NHL, they show the dots coming off the bench, and then you can see like the Joey dot running across. So there's we're doing a lot of fun stuff there, but we cover all the news of the Kraken, and you can go to DavyJonesLockerRoom.com for all of your Kraken needs. Well, not all of your Kraken needs, because you also got to listen to Locked On Kraken.
Until the next episode, be kind to yourself, be kind to one another, and a reminder that we hold fast, we stay true, and loud and proud we say, especially on a game day, let's go Kraken. And we will catch you on the next episode. Peace out, everybody.